thinking, who likes their quarterback more, the Niners or the Cowboys? And I think that one's a no-brainer, the 49ers. Now, the Niners are also paying him. Jimmy's guarantee is less than Chris Jones's guarantee.
Saw you tweet that. I think sometimes we forget that. I have to tell some people sometimes. I was texting with someone yesterday. I'm like, yeah, I'd rather have Jimmy than Dak. He's like, would you? I'm like, one, I just think Jimmy's better. But two, Jimmy costs like $22 million. Dak wants 35 and way more guaranteed. And Jimmy's on a year-to-year contract. I don't think people quite understand when you factor in the cash, is Jimmy like a top 5 non-rookie contracts? I'm talking second contract.
Yeah.
You could argue like a top 5 contract in the league for a team that's good and a guy that produces, right?
Yeah,
he's year to year and he's cheap.
But he's good. He's better than
he's
people.
Good.
We think he's better than people. Who likes their quarterback more, the Cowboys or the Vikings?
Well, can I give you a quick stat? And this tells you everything you need to know. In the history of franchise tags, do you know how many quarterbacks have been franchise tagged?
1.
Dak was the 3rd.
Hold on.
Dak was the 3rd.
So Kirk.
Yep. The other one's kind of an outlier one to be hard to think of. It's an older player, still in the league, star, different team at the time. They had just drafted the guy who actually just left the team back in the day because the guy got hurt, and then he had a career year, and they didn't want to let him walk for free.
Brady?
Close. Breeze. So Breeze gets hurt. No, excuse me. They must have had a bad season. They draft Phillip Rivers in 2004.
Oh.
Drew Brees has a fantastic season. They don't want to let him walk, so they franchise him. And then I think he gets hurt in that season during his franchise year. Rivers comes in, they never come back. Now, but I do think that shows you.
And I guess he wouldn't have played. Okay, yeah. So this isn't even played on the tag, just got tagged.
He played on the tag.
Are you saying quarterbacks that played on the tag or quarterbacks that got tagged?
Both.
Okay.
Played on the tag, got tagged. Yeah. And Drew Brees, I think, obviously got that shoulder injury while he was playing on the tag. That's why he hit free agency. It was a weird time. They already had the incumbent, so it was easy for them to let him walk. Weird situation. People kind of forget that Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers played together. I feel like when we say Luck, Manning, we all know, yeah, one left, the other one showed up. Those guys crossed over. What a fucking weird time. That would never happen today. But here's the problem with Dak. I just think that stat shows you. If I like you in the NFL and you play quarterback, you always get extended. Jimmy Garoppolo played 5 fucking games for the Niners, and they didn't franchise him. Because that was kind of controversial, right? People are like, why don't you just franchise him, let him play it out? You always franchise, or you always pay him if you can. And this one, to me, like, part of the reason Kirk Cousins kept getting franchised was I felt like, I don't think I'd pay him either. I do think there's some element of that with Dak Prescott. Like, I like Dak Prescott more than Kirk Cousins, but I'm not defending the Cowboys, or I mean, not like I see some people, the Cowboys screwed up, they should have got it done. Like, I don't know. Like, I actually don't think it's that crazy. I think it's very, very understandable. Because a lot of times, like, for example, other position players, like Chris Jones, let's say they wouldn't have been able to get a deal done. It is complicated with defensive tackles and linebackers and wide receivers sometimes, right? Because they're asking for astronomical amounts of money, and you just think to yourself, can I win without this guy? And it's an easy conversation to have because you'd say, well, a lot of times you can come to the answer yes, right? Like, well, should we just trade this guy for a 1 and get some cap space? With a quarterback, can I win without this guy? The answer is pretty simply and consistently, well, no. How do we find another guy? Like, what do we do, right? We finally got a good quarterback. The Cowboys, they've had one good quarterback since Troy Aikman retired. It was Tony Romo, which they kind of lucked into. And you could argue they lucked into Dak. They drafted him in the 4th round. And remember, he only began starting because Romo's back broke, and then Kellen Moore, he broke his ankle or broke his wrist, or he was 3rd on the depth chart. And then all of a sudden, Dak became the starter and had the great season. When you look at his last 2 years, like, he's solid. But when I see, like for example, last year, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, is it fair to say touchdowns are a little inflated in 2020? Like, 30 to me used to pop. Like, yeah, I mean, 30's 30, but I don't.
Well, you know who led the league in passing yards last year?
Was it Matty Ice?
No, it was Jameis.
Oh,
Sorry, I asked it like it was a trick question. It wasn't.
But I think Matty Ice was up top.
He was
too.
5th. You know who was 2nd?
Dak.
Yeah. You know who's 3rd? Goff.
Yeah, it's going to be, well, See, wouldn't you say that immediately? Well, a lot of those teams, like Cowboys, were down a lot.
Yeah,
The
that's what I'm
Rams
saying.
were down a lot.
Fourth, Phillip.
Yeah, down a lot. Yeah. Like, does that stat even mean much to you?
No, that's what I'm
Passing
saying.
yard total?
Now, Jameis was 33 and 30. Dak was 30 and 11.
No, but I don't think anyone's just
No.
The difference between, like, you'd go, yeah, I don't know if you can win with Jameis. People think I think the
There's a
overwhelming
chance.
consistent theme with Dak is he's a really solid quarterback. Here's his problem though. Goff got the huge deal. This podcast. Jared Goff fans like the guy. Pro Jared Goff. When I see you get $110 million guaranteed, and it's like in the Russell Wilson type realm, Aaron Rodgers type realm, even Matt Ryan type realm, I go, that's pretty strong. And then you see like it already limits their ability to do stuff. And I think you see the same numbers with Dak. You go, I don't know if I'd do that. I think he's actually been hurt by a couple of the recent contracts that, like, no one. Did you see anyone complain about Patrick Mahomes' contract? Like, oh yeah, I would have done it. Right? I don't think I saw one negative word. Because when you're a great player, they're like when Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald got paid, like, yeah, I would have done that. When you're kind of above average and you want great money, that's where I think a lot of people go, this is crazy. And that's where I stand, guy. I could say what you want about Kirk Cousins. His contract, now it's 2 years old, it was $27 million a year. Right? And the argument with Dak is, well, you pay him 35, that number looks like 27 in 2 years. I wouldn't want to pay Kirk Cousins that much money. I wouldn't want to pay Dak Prescott that much money. Like, I don't like doing those deals.
I think part of the evaluation is always, and this is where you go back to Patrick Mahomes. It's almost not fair to use him as an example because he's such an outlier. He makes everybody better is an understatement.
It's like talking about LeBron or Tiger Woods. Like, he's on a different level.
It just changes everything. So to say, if you're not the guy that changes everything, that you're not worth the money, it's a little unfair because there's not even that many guys. But it is true, right? As everyone starts making more money, everyone starts making more money, and the separation between the highest paid guys, especially in the NFL, and whoever is next, in terms of salaries, not that big, even though the gap between them as players is massive.
Yeah, it's not like the second tier makes 75 guaranteed and the top tier makes 120, right?
Yeah, it's 100 and then it'll be like 87.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I mean, we're using round numbers, but so that's the tough part is like we think Dak can be that's why the Jimmy contract, we from day one said, look, regardless of what you think of him, this is a good contract for a starting quarterback, and we think he's going to be pretty good, but he doesn't have to be great. He doesn't even have to be great for this contract. Like, Jimmy doesn't have to be, at the time, it was clear. To make his contract good, he didn't have to be an MVP. If he was just, like I said on Twitter, if he's just a Pro Bowl reserve, he's got a pretty good, like, that's a solid contract. If he's just the second or third quarterback out of your conference going to the Pro Bowl, you're going to feel really good about that contract if you're his team. Really good about it. Some of these contracts will require, like Dak's contract, it'll turn into one of these, like, well, you do kind of have to carry your team a little bit if you're making that money, right? Kirk's team's pretty good, but why weren't they great? They were pretty good because of him, but they also weren't great because of him.
Well, what they have to do this year? They started cutting guys. Like, eventually the bill comes
including
due.
A guy that makes Kirk better.
Yeah, we traded him away. And part of it, like, he wants a raise, and you go, well, the money doesn't fit. And I think you see it with Dak because you go, God, the Cowboys are pretty stacked. What are the chances they'll be able to keep all these guys next year if Dak starts making 35 a year, right? They would have to get rid of a lot of the guys. And you can go, well, it's easier to replace a highly paid right tackle than it is your quarterback. And I'd say yes when you talk about top guys. I just don't view him as a top guy. Like, if Jimmy Garoppolo, let's say, was a free agent this year, I would not feel comfortable giving him $35 million a year. I would say I would have franchised him. Like, if that season just happened and Jimmy had been a free agent, and I like Jimmy more than Dak, I would have been like, I can't give him Jared Goff money. And I like the guy, but I'd have to franchise him. And I think the Niners might, right? Would you have been shocked if the Niners had given him $115 million guaranteed? Even after last year, which was pretty solid?
I mean,
it's a complicated situation because you won. That's the difference. Like, if Dak had won, even though it's a team sport, it's hard for me to get out of my mind.
That's kind of how the Rams ended up in their position, though.
I know. That's where I think the Niners might franchise him, especially with, they like him. Do they love him? I think whenever you don't love a player, this would be my philosophy in pro sports. Because at least in business, most contracts, like when you hire an employee, I mean, you can fire him at any moment. That's the hard part about guaranteeing a lot of money in any contract. And you could argue like business acquisitions are like this. You're kind of in bed with this person for a while. So if you're going to pay a guy a premium that you like and don't love, I would always, like my philosophy if I was a general manager, and maybe you get burned, I would never pay a guy top money that I wasn't just head over heels in love with. Because I do think then you're always like second guessing yourself. And I get there's ownership pressure. And there is just pressure, right? If you just, let's say you let Dak walk after this year and he goes to the Bears or he goes to some other team and then looks good and you don't have a quarterback, you do look bad. Like you had the guy and he was solid for you. Like now this is a bad example because they're the Redskins, but like, do they feel that bad about Kirk Cousins? Probably not, right? But
about like, do they
miss?
You're saying do they miss him? Do they wish?
Yeah.
No.
But he's way better.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, would you guys hate being having a chance to win 8 games? Because right now you're terrible.
Yeah, so
and by the time this pod is out,
it is.
Look,
I think the worst spot to be in, guy, is having a quarterback that's somewhere between the 10 and 15 range. So they're clearly not a scrub, but no one says like they're the first team you want to play in Madden with, right? It's like most people want to play with Rodgers, Brady, like the sweet guys. But you can win with them, like a Jimmy, like a Dak, like a Jared Goff. When they become eligible for these huge, it's not an easy decision.
No,
like I can't crush you if you go either.
Well,
way.
I'll give you an analogy, and
because you would say the smartest thing the Redskins did was probably play it out the way they played it out.
The only thing was they didn't use all this time they had to find the next guy and be ready to roll with the next guy. So but the philosophy might have been right. They didn't execute it properly, though. No surprise. Like they should have been, okay, if we're just going to tag this guy for a couple years, then let's be ready to replace him with somebody a lot cheaper. And
let's draft a guy in the second round,
The analogy I would give you is a few years ago, I came to a philosophy when it comes to buying clothes that has served me really well. Did a massive closet clean.
Extra tight.
Super tight. Did a massive closet clean, and when you're throwing stuff out, it's like, this is cool, but okay, when do I don't wear this? Why don't I wear it? Well, it doesn't quite fit right. It's a little tight. It's a little long. It's a little loose. Get rid of it. Even if it's cool, even if it was a good deal. You only replace it with stuff you love. So I've ordered a few things like, oh, it's on sale. It's pretty cool. If it doesn't fit me right, then I won't wear it, and so it's got to go. It's as simple as that. If you don't love it, it doesn't matter that it's normally $50 and you got it for $25. If you don't love it, it doesn't matter that they were going fast and you got the last one. If you don't love it, you won't wear it. And if you don't wear it, then it doesn't matter that you got it for $25. That's $25 you wasted. Spend $50 on something you'll wear, and it's $50 well spent. Because what's the reality? Anyone listening to this knows this. How many shirts do you wear? How many hoodies do you wear? How many pairs of pants do you wear? I'm guessing in any of those categories, no more than 5.
It is nuts how often you don't wear shit.
Don't wear it.
It is wild.
So
and nothing guy is wasted on. Oh, I can get this $80 polo for $35, even though I don't really like the colors, but it's so cheap, and then you never wear it once. I would say
you don't feel good in
it
if you don't feel good in it. When you put, this happened recently with this hoodie. It was on sale. And it was really cool. I was like, I have not seen another one like this. But I put it on, I'm just like, that's not quite right. And you just think about it he's like, no, I have a hard and fast rule. The more it just got to go back. It's just, if you don't think about it, then you don't stress. You don't spend any time thinking about you got less shit in your closet. And it makes your life easier. And in the long run, you save money. You stop piling up. I got these 3 shirts. They were all a deal. But like, what am that's $75 or $100 of shirts that I don't wear. That's a waste.
You know what my philosophy is, guy?
What?
I've learned this. Colors. I don't fuck around with too many colors. I do very straight. Like I used to get collared shirts, multiple colors, sectioned off. It doesn't look good on me.
What do you mean by sectioned off? Like different patterns?
Well, just like, different patterns. Maybe it's like a darker blue to a lighter blue, or definitely stripes. I just like Just get like a tan shirt,
Yep.
get just a red shirt, get a brown shirt, get a blue shirt. They're easier to match with different clothes. But again, like your philosophy, if you find yourself in like Dick's Sporting Goods and you're in the golf section, you're like, God, they're selling these sweet Nikes
Exactly.
that should be $100 and they're only $40. It's just such a deal. And then you buy 3 of them that add up to $120. You never wear the shirt one time. It's like, this was so stupid.
Now, the problem is it's a good analogy until we say, okay, but you can always just return. There's always another. The marketplace is massive, right? The quarterback marketplace, it's just you back yourself into a corner
But see, that's
really
part of
fast.
my pushback on the quarterback marketplace.
You would just say you don't love them. It doesn't matter what the marketplace is.
Like clothes.
Find another guy.
And I think you'd use this for clothes. Has there ever been more brands now available with the internet? Ever? Because I'd say no, right? Collared shirts,
Free returns, a lot of free
T-shirts,
returns.
shorts, shoes, fucking everything possible is out there.
Yeah.
I think there's never been an easier time than finding a quarterback. Like when we were in, let's say, like high school or junior high, like in the mid 90s, late 90s, having a quarterback was a really special thing. I even say the next decade. I think over the last like decade, it's easier than it's ever been to just find a functional like Andy Dalton, Kirk Cousins. I don't think, maybe I'd have to do a deep dive study on this, but I'm not talking about like there's only so many Rodgers and Russell Wilsons in every decade and every group. But it feels like from the bottom like 7 or 8, even like how many Jared Goffs cut. Think of the league right now. Kyler Murray, Deshaun. There's just
the Cowboys
guys everywhere.
have Andy Dalton.
Guy, they have multiple quarterbacks. They found their quarterback in the 4th round who played in a spread offense in college and who's transitioned immediately. The quarterback he replaced was an undrafted free agent. I actually think it started getting, now Romo that was probably right as it started to change a little bit, just because maybe even he was ahead of his time. But I definitely think the last 5 or 6 years, like, that's why it is so bizarre when you see a guy like Josh Rosen just can't play. It's like, God, something must be off. Or Hackenberg was clearly just terrible. Like most guys, like, yeah, Nick Mullen's probably going to have a 9-year career, right? You know, this guy's just going to play for a while. It's just, and then if you're just an average, like an average is strong because Jared Goff was the number 1 overall pick. But he's going to have a 15-year NFL career, won't he? Matt Ryan's going to play for 20 years in the NFL. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play forever. I mean, obviously if he doesn't get hurt. Like you just can be really solid. It was harder to be really solid for a while. One, you got hurt a lot because they were, I don't know, snapping your neck in the backfield, you know? And I just think the offenses have just become a little more collegiate, which clearly, historically, the collegiate offenses have just been easier for just average guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Plug and play.
I guess what I'm saying is more, you know, Hal Mummy, Mike Leach. It was just like, well, you make them, and now a lot of these guys can just function in the league. And wasn't Andy Dalton? I mean, they ran a spread offense at TCU. You just because it was before, like it was a huge transition because the offenses were completely different. It was always why when we were at Fresno State, Pat got a lot of credit. Like he was one of the old school guys in a smaller program that ran a pro style offense. His guys transitioned. I would imagine in a scouting room, how often does that even come up? Like, does Saban run a pro-style offense anymore? No, he just runs a mesh of a smorgasbord of different
it probably
shit.
comes up with blocking, like offensive line blocking schemes, right?
Wide receivers forced to block and some, like, nuanced stuff. But just, like, I remember when Andy told me, I was like, did you find it harder to evaluate Mahomes? He said, no. It was way easier. I just went to my program. He's like, the one thing I siphoned out were all the quick screens. I don't need that. I know the guy can throw a quick screen. And just every throw. But he's like, 20 years ago, Donovan McNabb might have had 18 throws in a game. This kid, at minimum, is having 40. So even if I siphon out the 4 or 5 quick screens, I'm still getting 35 reps for 8 straight games that I can evaluate. Or, hell, am I lowballing him? I mean, that number might be 45, 50, right? It's huge.
Yeah.
And I do think that's where quarterback, like, ultimately – I'm not going to – when I evaluate you, I'm not watching you hand off. I'm just watching you throw. And I just feel like – have you seen DJ talk about this guy at North Dakota State? He acts like he's more talented than Carson Wentz.
Yeah, what's his name? Like Brick Tamlin or
yeah. He had like
it's like Blaze,
like Billy Cash, or just it just sounded like it would be in a movie, you know.
You know what's too bad about
Johnny Utah?
They were Trey Lance.
Trey Lance. Yeah, it's a good quarterback name.
But
how often we just be like, yeah, the guy might be the number 1 pick from North Dakota State. You'd be like, that's insane. That's got to be a historic moment. No, actually, they had the number 2 pick like 3 years ago. It's like, is that guy any good? Yeah, he's got a max contract.
You know,
pretty good.
The shitty part about that is, you know who North Dakota State was supposed to play week 1?
Oregon, right?